Hello everyone and welcome back. Today you can probably guess by the title of this video that we're going to be talking about Disney World versus Disneyland. I don't necessarily mean that one park is overall better than the other, but there are definitely some things that are a little better in Disney World and are a little better in Disneyland. All of this is just my personal opinion, and I'm sure other people will disagree, and that's perfectly fine. So let's talk Disney. So first, when you think about Disney World versus Disneyland, you're probably going to think which one's closer to me. Personally, Disney World is closer to me, so I've always went to Disney World over Disneyland. A few years ago, I went to Disneyland, and it actually wasn't because I wanted to go to Disneyland, more just going to California, but I'll get into that later. So yes, first and most importantly is location. You're going to want to know how expensive it is to go to either park, and if you live closer to Disneyland, it might be cheaper for you to go to Disneyland. If you live closer to Disney World, it might be closer to go to Disney World, so you just need to think about that. Another thing with location is really going to depend on where you want to stay. If you really want a big choice between different resorts you can stay at, Disney World definitely has a lot more Disney resorts to choose from just because the park is bigger. So it's going to make more sense for you to stay at Disney World if that's your big concern, is wanting to stay at a Disney resort to get the full Disney experience. However, there are 3, I believe, resorts at Disneyland that are on site, and of course you can always stay off site. So if you don't mind staying off site, it's going to be cheaper and that might work better for you. But definitely there are more on-site Disney World resorts than there are Disneyland. That brings me to my next point, which is the overall size of the park. If you want a Disney experience where you're really submerged in Disney and you just want everything Disney, I would go with Disney World just because it is bigger and there's a lot more to do at Disney World. If you have a shorter duration of your trip, Disneyland might be good for you. For example, when I went to California, Disneyland was the perfect size because we spent 2 days at Disneyland and I was able to complete, not everything, but a lot of what I wanted to do because it was smaller. If that had been Disney World, there is no way I'd even finish one park. For example, Epcot, there's just so much to do in that park that you're going to need a few days just for that park. So yes, the overall size also depends on how much time you're obviously going to be spending, because in Disneyland there are 2 parts of the park. There is California Adventure and just regular Disneyland. Those parks, it literally takes you 2 minutes to walk across to to walk between the 2 parks. So getting between those 2 parks isn't a big deal, and those parks aren't ginormous to the point where it's going to take you lots of time to finish those parks. Disney World, you're probably going to have to wait for a bus, and that could take a while. Then you have to get there, and your dining might be in a different park. It's just there's so much of it that it's going to take up a lot more of your time, so definitely plan ahead for how much time you're going to be traveling. So when you might have a certain amount of hours in your day, don't forget that there are going to be times when you're eating, getting transported to different parks. So definitely the overall size is going to be a huge factor in which one you're probably going to want to do. The next are Disney Magic Bands. Right now, Walt Disney World is the only one with Disney Magic Bands. I'm sure Disneyland is currently working on it, but that gives a big plus to Disney World because you don't have to worry about paper fast passes or credit cards or anything like that, or room keys. You can just all do it through your Magic Band, so that's really convenient for Walt Disney World to have that. The next thing is Disney dining. Disney World has a lot more on-site Disney dining experiences, more options for character dining and things like that, whereas Disneyland, because it's a smaller park, doesn't have as many. However, it still has a good amount, so don't let that discourage you. So the next big difference as far as Disney World versus Disneyland is Disney World, you are a lot more submerged in the Disney experience than you are in Disneyland. In Disneyland, it's very easy to be at a park and say, you know what, I don't feel like eating at the park today, I think I'm just gonna go off-site, go get like a cheeseburger at TGI Fridays or something like that. It's a lot easier than if you're at Disney World. because there's a lot more travel that's involved because the park is so big. Hence the name Disney World versus Disneyland. For some people, being submerged in Disney, like me, Disney World is perfect because you're truly submerged in the Disney setting. Whereas Disneyland, it's just not quite the same. And for other people, that might be perfect. They might not want an entire vacation that's dedicated to Disney. Like when I went to California, that's not what we went there for, so it was perfect. But for this upcoming trip, going to Disney World is perfect. We get to be submerged in Disney, and I'm really excited for that. The next thing are Disney rides. Disney does a really good job at trying to make equivalents to their park, such as Test Track and the Cars ride. They were the same ride, just different themes. I personally like the Cars ride better than Test Track just because it's very well themed in the Cars movie, and I loved Cars, so I think that was perfect for me. You also have rides such as Rock and Roller Coaster and California Screamin'. It's kind of the same concept. You're riding a roller coaster with music in the background. However, California Screamin' is outside and it has a loop in it. Rock and Roller Coaster is inside and it's dark. Some other rides that I would say are kind of like that. Space Mountain is a good example. Space Mountain, they're both the same thing. The cars are a little different and the ride is a little different, but it's pretty much the same ride. But Disney does just a little bit to make them different. And I know that probably goes for all their other parks like Hong Kong and Paris as well. You also have things like the Indiana Jones ride and the dinosaur ride that are pretty much the same thing. They're just themed differently. I know when I went, I was very disappointed in the Matterhorn because I thought it was going to be just like Expedition Everest, and it was nothing like Expedition Everest. Expedition Everest is one of my favorite Disney rides, and I was so upset when I found out the Matterhorn was not like that at all. So you have certain things like that that are completely different. Indiana Jones has always been my favorite at Disneyland, and Rock and Roller Coaster has always been one of my favorite at Disney World. So they're just different favorites at each park, which is good to have. The last thing I wanted to talk about today were shows. So shows are also very, very different between Disney World and Disneyland. Obviously, once again, Disney World, because it is a bigger park, is going to have probably more shows than Disneyland will. Plus you have Epcot, they have the World Showcase, so there are definitely many different shows just in that park alone. My favorite show, however, was in Disneyland, California, because they had World of Color. Animal Kingdom is actually coming up with a show that seems kind of similar to World of Color, so I'm very excited about that. But World of Color was really, really awesome, how they just project all the pictures onto the water and just make a nice water show, and I thought that was great. Which is kind of the equivalent, I guess, because it's on the castle, but I still didn't think it was as pretty and as magical as it was for Disney World of Color. So yeah, there you have it. There are many differences between Disney World and Disneyland. I definitely don't want to say that one park is better than the other because I love both parks equally. However, it just depends on what you're looking for your next Disney vacation. That was this week's video, and I hope I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and see you guys soon.